Hey everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna make something that's so quick, so easy, so adorable, so scrappy that I promise you are going to be making dozens of these. Today, we're gonna make the Cadence mini pouch, and this comes to us from the Styled Magnolia. You guys, I'm obsessed. I've made 2 so far. I have about 50 more to make. I think that this is gonna be a great gift for all of the middle schoolers this year, a great gift for teachers, family, friends, myself, literally everyone. This little tiny pouch is so clever. So let me get you a closer look. Let me see if I can get out the shot. Do you see? I'm trying to hide behind them so you can see them. They are the cutest little things ever. There are 2 template sets available that are printable in the pattern. One is for if you're using a number 5 zipper, and one is if you're using number 3 zipper. That's really the only difference. The number 3 zipper one is slightly smaller when it's finished. So think about that. Not enough to really be that noticeable to me. But if you're using a number 3 zipper, you're going to use certain measurements, and if you're using number 5, they will be different. That's the only difference. Okay, so let's just walk through this adorable little tiny pouch. It's so stinking cute. It's a little cubic shape. It has a zipper that opens nice and wide. This is great for AirPods, chapsticks, small things. I have a fanny pack here. We're going to try it out on a couple different ways. On the back, you have a 1-inch wide swivel hook, it's a swivel hook. And then you have a piece of webbing here. The piece of webbing does have a magnetic rivet-backed magnet. So this is a magnetic snap, but it has a rivet back. If you have the magnetic snaps that have the prongs on the back, you can't use those. So don't use those. Instead of the magnetic snap, you could use a fashion snap, which is a metal snap that has a backing. The big thing is you have to have the cap on the back. If you don't have either one of those things, you could use a plastic snap. I personally wouldn't. I would just leave it off. I would say that the snap portion here is completely optional if you don't want to use it. So I wanted to try it on because whenever I was playing with this, I was wondering what was the point of that snap on the back. And I was told that the snap on the back is to keep the webbing from kind of getting in the way, to just keep it tucked into the back of the material. But then it was like, well, but why have this webbing on the back at all? And then some people said you can put it on your belt, or you can put it on a fanny pack, which is what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna open the snap, put it on my fanny pack. That's so cute. I love a bag for a bag. I really do. I get super excited about a bag for a bag. Oh, and so when you do that magnetic snap there, it kind of tightens it on the strap too, so it doesn't move around so much. Well, that's clever. I love that. Look how stinky cute it is. My bag has a bag. It's a little big for this fanny pack. I know a lot of folks really like this really big fanny pack, so it would probably look better with the big one, but it is super stinking cute. Oh my gosh. This is also a great little way to clip onto your backpack. I mean, I'm thinking middle schoolers, high schoolers, this is a great little addition for their backpacks because those kids have a lot of stuff to carry. So now let's talk about the construction of this for just a minute. This pattern is very unique. The construction is very unique. I promise you, it is there for a reason and it is amazing, but it is easy to get turned around. I'm gonna walk you through it. The point of the construction being a little different is to avoid binding on the zipper. So if you've made a lot of bags like this with me before, you'll notice this zipper is in the seam. So we have the gusset, the front panel. The zipper is in the seam between the gusset and the front panel, which means you're gonna have binding on it. So you see on the back, we have binding for the back panel. A lot of people are not a big fan of binding against the zipper tape because sometimes your zipper can get caught in it. I totally get that. But it's a common challenge for pattern designers with how do we make this work? Sometimes we just put the zipper right down the middle of the gusset so we don't have to deal with it. But it looks so good with the zipper in the seam. And that's where this designer kind of brought in a whole new way of doing it, which is so smart. So I'm gonna hold your hand through everything. I promise you, I got it. I've made all the mistakes when I was trying this out, so I know where you're gonna run into an issue or a little bit of confusion. So I'm gonna walk you through all of it. It's so simple, and then once you do it once, it sticks, and you're like, okay, I could do this 1,000 times. It's so clever. So thank you so much to the Styled Magnolia for allowing me to feature your pattern on the channel. I love this. I'll have a link down below for the pattern. Make sure you go check it out. It is a very affordable pattern. And like I said, this is one of those items that I think If you were selling at a market, this would be a top seller, and you could just use scraps. You don't have to go buy a bunch of material to make this. I'm making all of mine in bonded nylon because I love bonded nylon, and I think that it's a perfect material, especially for the kiddos, because it's easy to keep clean and it's really durable, and it's really easy to sew. So instead of vinyl, I haven't tried one in vinyl, but it's a lot easier to sew for me than vinyl. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, leave them down below. Any other patterns you see on their site, let me know. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, so for this pattern, it's super scrappy. You could use nothing but scraps, which is essentially what I'm doing. I'm just pulling them from larger pieces. You're gonna need about a fat quarter of exterior material and a fat quarter of lining material. For my exterior material, I'm using bonded nylon because I love bonded nylon. So I'm gonna use a few scraps from each one of these 3 pieces here. It's all the same type of material. It is a nylon material that has like a backing on it. So I don't need to apply any sort of interfacing or stabilizer to this. For my lining material, I'm gonna use a water resistant canvas. This is also a great item to use on your lining because you don't have to add any interfacing to it whatsoever. It's not going to stretch or anything like that. It's really easy to work with, and I don't need to add any extra oomph to anything here to keep its shape. So here are the rest of the materials I'll be working with. Just a small amount of binding. Honestly, you can make this yourself. I would say, I mean, less than a yard, obviously. Very small amount of binding. And then a very small amount of webbing. About 5 inches of webbing is as much as you'll possibly need. I have a bag tag, a 1-inch wide D-ring, and then I'm using a number 3 zipper. If you're using a number 5 zipper, you have different pattern pieces. So make sure you keep that in mind. There are 2 sets of pattern pieces here for a number 3 zipper or a number 5 zipper. They come out about the same, slight difference in size, but mostly the same. So since I never really work with number 3 zippers, I decided that's what we're gonna use today. So I have this beautiful number 3 zipper here. I have 7 inches of it. If you're using the number 5 zipper, you're gonna have a longer piece. And then I have 2 little number 3 zipper pulls. And then I have a magnetic snap here. This is a riveted magnetic snap. If you're not using a riveted magnetic snap, you will wanna use a fashion snap. So you cannot use the magnetic snap that has the prongs on the back because you need to be able to see the back of whatever this goes into. So just keep that in mind. You could skip it entirely. You don't have to have a snap at all of any sort, and that's perfectly fine. You could use a plastic snap, although those are really hard to get through webbing, but you could use a metal fashion snap. Those are some options. Okay, here's all my tools and other stuff. First, my rivet press and hole punch. This is purely for that magnetic snap that has the rivet back. If you are opting to not use any snap of any sort, you don't need any of this stuff right here. So I have my die set that goes with it. The die set for the magnetic snaps is a set of 3, 2 different bottoms and 1 top. I have what I keep next to my sewing machine at all time, a little container here that has a stiletto and some snips. The thread I'm using today is a Tex 45 weight thread. I forgot the color of this, but it's a really pretty pastel variegated thread from Saya Swag. In the bobbin, I'm using a Mara 100 weight thread. I'm gonna use a Microtex 8012 needle. I have my turning wand as always. I have this like pencil, this chalk pencil. It's actually has 3 different colors in it, which is really, really handy with pretty much every project. So I'm gonna use this pencil and an erasing marker. Then I have a 1-inch by 6-inch ruler and a lighter, a seam ripper. Hopefully we don't need it, but just in case, make sure you have a good one on hand, and then a good amount of plastic clips. So not a whole lot of pattern pieces here. Let's go through them. I have the main body pattern piece, 2 cuts of exterior, 2 cuts of lining. Make sure you have the right pattern pieces. This is a number 3, meaning I'm using a number 3 zipper. If you're using a number 5 zipper, that's a different set of pattern pieces. For the bottom gusset, I have 1 cut of exterior and 1 cut of lining. For the zipper gusset, I have 1 cut of exterior and lining, and then I have my webbing strip. Now, before we get started, I want you to make these marks on the back of your main panels. This is very important, okay? These marks on the top and the bottom are the midpoints of the top and the bottom. The marks on the side here that say Gusset, those are not midpoint marks. Don't make the same mistake that I did, okay? Use the template to make those marks. And if you don't have a directional print, I would highly suggest you write on the top that it's the top. So I'm just gonna flip this over to the black pencil. And so on the back here of my main pieces, I'm gonna write T for top. And then I can just take these templates and on the wrong side, overlay it, pick it up, and mark where the gusset goes. You just do it now. Don't get caught up later thinking that you can just mark midpoints, because you cannot. So I suggest you do that for definitely the 4 main panels. And then I would also suggest you mark the midpoints on the 2 long edges of both the zipper gusset and the bottom gusset. So grab your exterior zipper gusset and lay it right side up, and then grab your zipper tape and lay it right side down, making sure you have the same amount of overhang on both sides. The zipper is not the same size as the zipper gusset. It should be just a bit longer or wider. And we're going to clip these right sides together. If you prefer to tape them right sides together, you can do that. I'm just going to clip them. So pay attention to the instructions of the pattern, because if you're using a number 5 zipper, you're going to be using a lot of 3/8 inch seam allowances. If you're using a number 3 zipper, you're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to sew along this clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. So once you have this sewn on, you're going to press the exterior panel away from the zipper so that the seam is behind that zipper exterior panel. No top stitching. We're not top stitching this at all today. We're just going to give it a good press. You won't need to top stitch. Trust me, it all tucks in really nicely in the end. There's no top stitching needed here. So give that a good finger press, and then flip this around so that the zipper's on the top and the zipper panel is on the bottom. And if you're just using one zipper pull, you're going to go from the left to the right. Okay, so insert your zipper pull from the left side so it's closing towards the right. If you're using 2 zipper pulls, add those now. Okay, so now if you have excess zipper tape, which you should, we're going to trim that down so this is all the same width or length, however you want to look at it. I'm just eyeballing this too. It doesn't have to be super perfect. So now we're not adding the lining, so go ahead and set the lining to the side. Now you need to grab your exterior bottom gusset, and we're going to lay that right side up. And we're going to take our zipper unit and we're going to lay it right side down. So right sides together with the bottom gusset. They should be the same width. And we're going to focus on the 2 short edges. Now, pay attention to this. The whole goal here is to make sure we do not sew over the seam allowance. So see how the seam allowance is just sticking straight up right here? We don't want to sew over any of that. So that's the point of these next couple steps. So I'm going to start on the right side over here. I'm going to line it up corner to corner and clip it in place. So now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to lift up that seam allowance out of the way, and starting at where I see my stitching for that seam by the zipper, I'm going to sew along the bottom edge, so it's the zipper panel and the bottom gusset at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end, only going from stitching to bottom edge of material. Okay, so now that I have the bottom stitched, I'm going to focus on the zipper part. So now I'm just going to focus on this top right corner. Add a clip there if you need to. And now we're going to stitch only over the zipper tape at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, going from the top raw edge down to the stitching. Again, you are not going over a seam allowance. Remember, we're not sewing on seam allowances. So in the end, the stitching is going to meet up with the stitching on the bottom part. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so we have the stitching on the top of the seam and the stitching on the bottom of the seam. There we go. So now we're going to repeat on the left side. I'll walk you through it. It doesn't take very long. So I'm going to always line up edge to edge, corner to corner. And since you didn't top stitch down this seam, you should be able to, you have some wiggle room here. You can kind of spread that seam to get it exactly where you need it, which is really nice. So once again, I'm going to focus on just the bottom part here where my zipper gusset and bottom gusset are meeting. And I'm going to start at the stitch line where my seam allowance is and sew down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end, not sewing over the seam allowance at all. Okay, once the bottom is stitched, we're going to focus on the top where the zipper is, once again going from our previous stitch line and just going right over the left edge of our zipper tape at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, so now your short edges are completely enclosed, but you have your seam allowance completely free as well, which is important because we're going to need that later. So now what you want to do is find the midpoints. If you've already marked them, they should line up, but just bring seams together and check that your midpoint marks are good on your gussets. And you'll also want to mark a midpoint on your zipper tape. So if you need to move your zippers, do that. And I'm just going to bring those seams together and give this a pinch. Don't cut into your zipper tape to mark midpoints. I used to do that. It's not worth the risk. They do fray. I'm just going to use my white chalk pencil here, and I'll just mark right on that fold. And I like to mark the front and the back, just to make sure I can see it everywhere. On bonded nylon, you can cut those cute little triangles to mark midpoints so it's easier to see everywhere. Just don't do it on zipper tape. All right, so put the lining to the side and set your exterior zipper gusset to the side for just a moment. Now we're gonna work on the front main panel, and I'm gonna add my bag tag here. I don't know why I mentioned stuff for a metal bag tag. I'm not using a metal bag tag today, but if you were, you would wanna use that glue and that tape. I'm just gonna use double-sided tape for my sew-on bag tag. And I'm gonna center it on the bottom edge and put it about 1 inch up. You can honestly put this wherever you like. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm gonna stick it down, and I'm gonna top stitch around all 4 edges of my tag at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and so with my bag tags, I don't like to backstitch. I just leave the top thread and the bobbin thread nice and long. And then I'll flip it to the wrong side here and pull on my bobbin thread so that I have a little loop of my top thread, and I'll just pull the top thread to the back so that all 4 tails are on the wrong side. And then once all 4 of them are back there, you can just tie them off. I like to use about 3 tight knots. And then just trim down those threads. If you want to add a little bit of glue over that knot, you can, or even a little piece of tape. But I just leave it as is. I find it's fine. So there we go. Front panel is all ready to go. Time to start really paying attention. You got to pay attention this whole time, guys. There's a lot of important steps here. We're going to attach our gusset to the front panel, but we're going to do it in sections. We're not doing it all at once. We're going to prep it mostly all at once, though. Okay, so we want the zipper to be the side we're working with. So when you look at your gusset here, you have a fabric side here on the left, and you have a zipper side here on the right. We want the zipper side. So the zipper side midpoint mark is going to match up with the top midpoint mark on our front main panel, and they're going to be right sides together. So right side of zipper to right side of front main panel. Clip those together. Now the top edge here, where the zipper is, we're not worrying about too much right now. We just want to make sure it's in the right spot. So let's flip this around, and we're going to look at the midpoint mark on the bottom gusset. We're going to line that up with the midpoint mark on the bottom of the front main panel and clip those right sides together. Now you're going to take the seam of your gusset where the zipper meets the bottom gusset, and you're going to match up that, where that stitching is for the seam, you're going to match that up with the gusset mark on the left or the right, whichever one you're starting with. And I like to clip around that seam. We're still not stitching over that seam yet. Do the same thing on the other side. So that's something to remember in the beginning steps here, is just try to make sure we're not stitching down seams. Seams are just kind of sticking up. So we're going to be focused on the bottom gusset. So I'm going to go around and just tuck in those rounded corners into my gusset and clip it in place. If you find that the gusset has a hard time stretching around those rounded corners, you can give it just a couple, I would say 2 at the most, just like 2 little 1/8 of an inch deep cuts. Okay, so you can see I have a couple clips up here where my zipper tape is, but that's just to keep that in place. I'm not really worried about that top edge. I'm really just focused on this bottom edge where my bottom gusset is. So focusing only on the bottom gusset, we're gonna start at where that seam is between the top and the bottom of our gussets. We're gonna flip that seam out of the way. So I'm gonna just flip it up towards the zipper. So pushing that seam towards the zipper. And right at that stitching for that seam, I'm gonna start my sewing. And I'm gonna sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around my bottom gusset until I get to the other seam of the gusset. And that's where I'm gonna stop. Again, I'm not stitching over that seam whatsoever. I'm gonna push it up towards the zipper. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. Remember, if you're using a number 5 zipper, you're gonna be doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance here. I'll be doing a 1/4 inch because I'm using a number 3 zipper. Okay, once you have that stitched, just pop out those bottom corners, make sure they look good. If you have a little bit of pleating, if it bothers you, you can unpick just that section and then re-sew it. So you don't have to unpick the whole thing. This is gonna be so cute. This is gonna be so stinking cute. I'm obsessed with these. Okay, so we've got the bottom sewn. Now we wanna sew the top. And same kind of thing, we're just doing this in pieces so we don't sew over that seam allowance on these sides. So we have our midpoints matched up on the top still. And we're just going to tuck in those corners and pull the zipper tape around them. If it makes it easier, you might want to open up your zipper. Ooh, look at my zipper pulls are pushing through that. That's not good. We don't want that. Go inside the bag. So sometimes when you open up your zipper, it allows your zipper to kind of stretch a little bit easier. So just go around. This shouldn't be very difficult to get the zipper to wrap around these sides and the corners, especially because you already have the ends sewn down here in the seam. Just do your best to finagle it and get it all nice looking. Do not cut slits into your zipper tape. I know that, again, I've done that before too, but zipper tape, it is so unpredictable. it can unravel so easily. So just don't do it. So just stretch it. You'll be good. If you find that it's really difficult, you could hand baste these corners in place. We've done that before. I'll have a link to a video we've done that before on. It's very quick and easy, but you can just take some needle and thread and hand baste these corners in place, and it makes it super easy to attach the rest of it. I don't feel like I need to, so I'm gonna leave it as is. And this time we're gonna baste along this clipped edge, and I'm gonna do it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you're doing the number 5, you're gonna do it at 1/4 inch seam allowance, but we are going to attach the lining to this in the next step. So you could do the full 1/4 inch seam allowance here if you'd like, and just use that as a guideline in the next step. I'm gonna be honest with you, either way works. It's whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm gonna baste at 1/8 of an inch, but if you wanna just sew it at 1/4 of an inch right now, get it over and done with, you can definitely do that. Backstitch at the beginning and the end. So just like I did with the bottom gusset, when I was sewing the top part, I made sure that I did not sew over the seam allowance on the sides of the gusset. Once again, leaving those open and free. And if you find that your zipper tape is fraying on those seams, I should have done this earlier, but just grab a lighter and heat seal it. So you should really always do that with zipper tape. We see how it frays like that? This is why we heat seal it. It's also why we don't cut little notches into the zipper tape, because it'll do that there too. Okay, so your front panel exterior is pretty much good to go. Now we're gonna work on the lining, so set this to the side. So now grab your front panel lining piece. I'm trying to figure out where I said top. Okay, make sure you have the top on the top, and this is the lining for the front panel, and then grab your lining bottom gusset. And we're gonna flip the bottom gusset so it's wrong side up. And then on the top edge here, or the top corners, we're gonna mark in 1/4 of an inch. So if you're doing the number 5 zipper, this is going to be 3/8 of an inch. To the black, here we go. And we're just gonna mark 1/4 inch in from each short edge along the top long edge. So now we're gonna take the bottom gusset and we're gonna lay it right sides together with the lining front panel, but you wanna rotate this so that the marks that you have on that long edge are facing the bottom edge of your bottom gusset, so everything is down. We're gonna line up the midpoints first. So midpoint of bottom gusset with midpoint on the bottom of your front panel. And then on the left side here, I'm gonna pull up this left corner of my bottom gusset, and that mark that's at the 1/4 inch, that is going to match up with the gusset mark on the left side of my front panel. So not the top of the material, but that 1/4 inch mark is where you're gonna line it up. Over here on the right, I'm gonna flip that corner up. Remember, this is still right sides together. And that 1/4 inch mark, or 3/8 of an inch mark, if you're doing a number 5 zipper, is going to match up with that gusset mark on the side of your front panel. And then just tuck the corners into the gusset. Since this is the lining, it's okay if it's a little pleated, if it's a little ripply. I don't stress too much about making sure it can spread around those corners. I feel like the lining is not something that, it's not noticeable. Just clip around there. And now with the gusset facing wrong side up, we're going to start sewing at that 1/4 inch mark, and we're gonna sew at 1/4 of an inch around the bottom edge of this gusset until we get to the other 1/4 of an inch mark. So you're not going from the top of the bottom gusset to the other top. You're only going from 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch. Sew it at your seam allowance. Okay, so now it's like, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of like a doom buggy. Since we're doing the Haunted Mansion theme, you know those little doom buggies? It's like, woo, going for a ride. It kind of looks like that, doesn't it? That's how it should look, like a chair. So we just have the bottom gusset attached, and then once again, you should be able to pull the corner of the bottom gusset away from the main panel, okay? Just like that. So now grab your exterior main panel. Let's flip this out again. What we want to do is we want to attach this lining main panel to the exterior main panel right sides together. And here's how we're going to do that. You're going to push away the zipper gusset and the bottom gusset from the exterior main panel. So we're really focused on this top edge here where we have our zipper basted. Now grab your lining main panel and lay it right sides together with the exterior main panel. We have a lot going on the bottom. Don't worry about it. It's not our concern right now. We're going to do midpoint to midpoint, lining and exterior main panels right sides together, zipper sandwiched in between. Clip these together. And we're going to clip these right sides together all the way around their corners and then down to the seams. So your gusset marks on the left and right of each of your main panels should match up. So we're gonna bring those together too. Use those marks to help here. Push zipper tape out of the way, push zippers out of the way. You just want to flatten this out as much as possible. And this part's a little bit tricky, and this is why I kind of suggested maybe sewing your zipper on in the previous step at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because the zipper, you see how the zipper, it starts to like fold in on itself. That's easy to sew over on accident. And when you baste, you have a higher chance of that happening. Something to think about. Also, when we're bringing our gusset marks together, make sure you fold down that top piece of your bottom gusset. So that little flailing corner there that we didn't sew down, it needs to be folded out of the way. We still don't want to sew that yet. So gusset mark to gusset mark, panels right sides together, the top piece of the lining bottom gusset out of the way. It's a lot to remember here. Flatten out your zipper tape as much as you can. Really flatten it out. Because those zipper coils, they try to push right up into the seam, and they're so, especially with the number 3 zipper, they're so easy to sew over on accident because they're little. Make sure, so I'm just double checking to make sure my lining top corners are not clipped into the seam. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew right around this clipped edge. So from gusset mark over to the other gusset mark at your seam allowance. For me, that's a 1/4 inch. If you sewed your zipper on already at a 1/4 inch to the exterior panel, do this from the back side of your exterior panel. So you can see the stitches you already made, and just try to make sure that when you're sewing it on, it goes just a tad bit inside those stitches. Like not a lot, just a little bit. That way you won't see any of those stitches in the end. Take your time with this and really make sure, especially on those corners, stop and make sure that you're pulling the zipper teeth out of the way. You can kind of move them around as you're going. You don't want to sew those down. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, so once you have that sewn in there, let's flip this out. So push it so it's, the zipper is just poking out. I almost always have to go fix these corners. So let's just take a look at this. Looks pretty good. Give it a good judge. If it's a little, like chunky, like globs of it's not smooth, don't worry about it. We can do some stuff to smooth it out in just a moment. I just want to make sure I didn't catch the zipper teeth, and that looks good. I'm going to flip the whole thing out because I'm not a patient person. I just want to see how this looks. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Look at this. Look how cute it is and how perfect those little corners are. I just love them. Okay, let's open the zipper back up. Pull this out. Okay, make sure your gussets are all good. Nothing sewn in where it's not supposed to be. There we go. So now, to help smooth out those corners on the top there, we gotta flip this back out. So we're looking at that seam we just sewed. One thing you can do is you can trim around those corners, but not the zipper tape. Not the zipper tape. So you can pull away the exterior material and then just trim down the exterior material fairly close to your stitching. This is especially easy if you're doing, you know, bonded nylon or something. Vinyl can get a little tricky, but I'm just gonna go around those. And what we're doing is we're just reducing the bulk in the seam. So when we turn this back out, there's not as much stuff shoved in the way. You know, you don't have a bunch of fabric that you have to find a place to put. So and then I'm gonna go to the lining side, do the same thing. And if you look closely at my seams, you would see that my seam allowance is all kinds of all over the place. Some of these corners for the lining are probably at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. It is perfectly fine to not be perfect. It's still gonna look great. Okay, so now once I have those corners smoothed out, let me check this. So now it's a lot less frumpy, and I can feel it too. It doesn't feel as like, you know, chunks of fabric all over the place. It feels a lot smoother. So cute. Okay, so once again, turn this back out. Now the goal is we want to attach the zipper gusset lining. So that's this piece right here. This is our other lining gusset piece. We need to attach that, but we're not attaching it all together yet. So bear with me. In the end, think of it this way. The zipper gusset lining needs to go right sides together with the zipper gusset exterior with the unattached zipper here in between them. So whatever else is going on everywhere else, don't worry about it. We just need to attach those things together. So push everything out of the way as much as you can and grab your zipper gusset lining. and lay it right sides together with the exterior zipper gusset. Zipper sandwiched in between, and match up those midpoints and clip together. And when you do this, notice how as you clip down towards the left edge here, it's kind of rounded, but you can straighten it out pretty easily. Keep going. And you should notice that the short edge of your lining gusset is going to match up perfectly with the end of your zipper tape. Just like this. And remember, we have this nice seam allowance here, so it's not sewn into anything. You can easily line it up edge to edge. So going down the right side, I'm just going to straighten this out as much as I can and clip the lining together with the exterior and the zipper. And then once again, this is just going to line up corner to corner with my zipper. Exactly. So for this clipped edge, we can sew all the way from corner of lining zipper gusset all the way to corner of the gusset. I'm going to sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It shouldn't be that difficult. You don't have any crazy curves here, so you should be able to straighten this out as you go, backstitch at the beginning and the end, and just keep everything else out of the way while you do this. Okay, the hardest part about that is really the zipper pulls, because especially if you have big zipper pulls, they really get in the way. But let's just flip it all right side out. Tuck in all your bits. So you should have your zipper lining gusset attached and your bottom lining gusset attached, but they are not attached to each other. They're both separately attached to the exterior. And you see what that does is it gives you this beautiful, like birthed seam on the inside, so you don't have to bind it. Isn't that so stinking cute? So fold the zipper gussets back, wrong sides together. And now we're going to enclose the edges. So let's flip this out like this so we can really see what we're working with here. So let's just do this one at a time. I have my lining zipper gusset here. I'm just going to lay it against the seam that attaches my exterior zipper and bottom gussets. So it's already stitched down to the zipper here, right? So it's pulled so it's right side up right now. And I can already just attach it to this short edge here. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to fold that and clip it there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that loosey-goosey short edge of my bottom gusset that's near this, and I'm going to flip that down. So now my bottom gusset and my zipper gusset for the linings are going to be right sides together. And I'm just going to match that up and clip it where it's already clipped. And then it should be the same width as the seam we already have here. I'm going to move my zipper up and out of the way a little bit. Okay, so this is what it should look like. I have the back of my exterior bottom gusset here on the left. I have the back of my lining bottom gusset here on the right. And I have a lot sandwiched in between. I have my exterior and lining zipper gussets sandwiched in between. This is how it should look. If it doesn't look like this, if you are getting confused, go back a couple steps. I'm going to repeat on the other side, but I just want to make sure we're all together on this. Now, on this edge right here that's clipped, we're going to sew completely from corner to corner at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this right side out to make sure it looks correct. And you should notice, there we go. So now you see we have the edge completely enclosed on the exterior and on the lining side. See? So let's go through how to do that again on the other side. So looking at the right edge over here, I'm going to pull the bottom gusset out of the way first. So I have my lining zipper gusset. So first I'm going to pull my zipper pull up a little bit so I don't sew over that. I have my lining zipper gusset facing right side up, and I'm going to match it up corner to corner with this seam that's between the exterior gusset panels. So just line that up corner to corner. It should look nice and neat like that. And then I'm going to take my lining bottom gusset, I'm going to fold it over so it's right sides together with the top gusset, and I'm going to include it in the clip that's already there, and then I'm going to make sure that it goes all the way over to the left corner here, over the zipper tape, and clip that in place. So all these layers should be clipped together. Make sure you push everything else out of the way, and sew over this short clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, I love this part. It's so exciting. It looks kind of like a mess, doesn't it? It's like, what did I just do? Now you just flip it out. Just flip it so it's exterior right side out. Push that lining bottom gusset down. Give it all a nice little massage. Pull out all the edges. And look at that. Completely enclosed. The zipper is completely enclosed. You do not need to do any top stitching around it. It's nice and tight. You don't have any binding around the zipper that you have to worry about getting it caught in. I mean, it's a really, really, really clever solution to a very common bag making issue, honestly. I've seen so many different ways to do this. And I think this might be my favorite way. I mean, it's kind of like a puzzle, but it works. Okay, so next what we want to do is just line up all these raw edges. So grab all your midpoint marks, and you're bringing the exterior gusset and the lining gussets wrong sides together, and then clipping around all the edges so that we can close up these seams. Okay, once you have them clipped around the entire edge, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and just baste around the raw edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alrighty. Your bag is mostly done. That was the hard part. That was all the hard parts. And it wasn't even hard. It was just, you know, you got to really pay attention to the steps. But once you do it once, I'm telling you, you got it. You can do it over and over again. So let's set this to the side. And now we're going to work on the back panel. So you're going to want your exterior back panel and your webbing, some sort of a marking tool as well. And first, from the top of your webbing on the right side, use a erasable marking tool and mark 3/4 of an inch down. Just do a line like that. That's probably not going to last very long. And then if you are attaching the snap or magnetic snap, something with a rivet, you're going to also want to mark placement for that. We're going to mark 2 1/8 of an inch down because we're doing the number 3. If you're doing the number 5 zipper, your measurement's going to be different. So I'm just going to measure down 2 1/8 of an inch and mark a dot in the center. And because I know it's going to erase soon, I'm just going to go ahead and punch a hole right where that is. I'll save that for later. So take your webbing and lay it right side up and use the midpoint mark on the top edge to center this and clip it in place. And then use the midpoint mark on the bottom edge to center the bottom of your webbing and clip in place. The webbing is slightly taller than the pocket, so you're going to have a little bit of a bowing action. So now what we want to do is just focusing on the top edge right now. We're going to baste this top edge of our webbing down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you can remove the clips from the bottom of your webbing. Grab your 1-inch swivel hook and slide this on so it's swivel side up. That's very chunky. That's pretty heavy. And you're going to pull it all the way to the top edge. And then line up the bottom edge of your webbing once again with the bottom edge of your exterior panel. And push down this top edge as best you can. And what we're going to do now is with the swivel hook all the way against the top of the seam, we're going to top stitch right over that 3/4 of an inch mark, back stitching at the beginning and the end, holding that swivel hook in place. And I do back stitch at the beginning and the end of that top stitching, but I also leave the tails long as like extra security. And I'm just going to pull the threads to the back of my exterior back panel, and I'll knot them off. All right, so now we're going to do our hardware. Like I said, this is optional. You could just leave it off if you'd like, but we're going to push our strap down and you know, it's not the same height, so just figure out where you want it. Push our strap down and use a marking tool. Poke it through the hole you made on your webbing so you can have placement for it on the exterior. Make sure you can see it. And then grab your hole punch and just punch out that hole on the exterior back panel. And then I grabbed a little piece of Decoville Light. You do want some sort of a reinforcement on the back here. It could even just be another piece of your material. Your exterior material will be fine. Just something so that the snap isn't just pulling on that fabric all the time. So now I like the male end of the magnetic snap to go on the webbing because it's thinner. Honestly, you could do either one. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going to insert the snap part on the back of the webbing just like this. And then I'm going to put the cap over the right side. And then with my rivet press, I'm going to install the top rivet, which kind of looks like just like a regular rivet press one because that goes with the cap. I'm just going to insert that. And then for the bottom rivet, it needs to fit with this. So this is the male end. So I'm going to find the bottom that looks like the female end. There it is. Put that there. Slide this in, make sure it's lined up properly, and then press it down. Easy peasy. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the exterior material. So moving the webbing out of the way, I'm going to have my female end on the right side of my material. Flip it over. I'm going to put my stabilizer over the stem there, and then put the cap on, switch out these bottom dies, and slide this in and press it down. And there we go. Super quick. See, and just snaps in place like that. It's so stinking cute. So then finally pull the bottom of your webbing, lining it up with the midpoint on the bottom of your exterior panel, and clip together, and now we'll just baste over that bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So the last step for the back panel is attaching the lining. This is going to be simple. We're just going to take our exterior and our lining back panels and try to figure out where the top is. And we're going to lay them wrong sides together. Make sure the tops are lined up, and you can use all 4 marks for the gusset and the midpoints to help with this. And just clip around all 4 edges and all the corners. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and just baste around all the edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you pull that swivel hook down so it's not in the way. Alrighty, your back panel is all done. We can finish this up. So make sure your zipper is mostly open and flip your front panel and gusset so that it's lining sides out. Grab your back panel and you're going to lay it lining side up. So it's exterior sides, right sides together. The pouch is completely lining side out. And use those midpoint marks on the top and bottom of your back panel to line it up with the gusset. And then use the gusset marks on the side to line that up with the seam between the zipper gusset and the bottom gussets. And then just go around and tuck in your corners. I do find that I need to cut into the gusset to help it spread around these corners. So I'm going to do about 3 little snips into the gusset, and then I tuck in that corner, and the gusset can now spread easier. See how the snips make it open up so you have more space. And just get it nice and tucked in there. Everything as flat as possible. Use clips to help you here. Do that for all 4 corners. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and with the gusset lining facing up, I'm going to sew around the entire edge that's clipped at 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. I don't baste it, I just sew the whole thing at 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, after attaching that, I suggest just flipping it out real quick. It's nice and small, and if you're not using vinyl, then it's pretty easy to flip out. And just check your corners, make sure you're happy with them. They all look really, really good. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, the last step is just attaching binding. This is very easy, especially if you're using the elastic binding that I'm using. So I'm just gonna grab this. And I always like to start at the bottom with binding. You can start wherever though if you wanna start on the side. Let's start on the side this time. So I'm just going to wrap it around. So this binding, it has a natural fold going right down the center. It's called fold over elastic. I'll have links down below. I get mine from Saya Swag, which has lots of beautiful color options. And we're just gonna wrap it around the seam, clipping it in place. So when I'm attaching this, I usually like to look at the back of the main panel, because when I sew this down, I'll be looking at the gusset side. So if I look at the main side when I'm clipping it in place, I know that I'm covering the stitching. And so when I'm just focused on the other edge in the next step, I know I'll catch everything. So just stretch it as you go around those corners, and you'll notice you don't have any wrinkles, any pleats, nothing like that. So I like my binding to overlap where I started by about 1/2 of an inch or so. I just eyeball it. You could, if you'd like, you can fold in this edge here by about 1/4 of an inch so that you don't have any raw edges of your binding that you cut showing. That's perfectly fine. All right, so now with the binding in place, I'm going to take this back to the sewing machine, and with the lining of the gusset facing right side up, I'm going to top stitch around all the edges. Once again, just 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, now check the back and make sure you caught your binding everywhere. Once you're good, you can just flip this right side out. Just really spend some time to poke out those corners. You'll notice that the corners that have the binding, they kind of like pull in on themselves more. You just gotta really push them out. That binding, it feels like it's working against you, but as you push it more, it's actually gonna work for you and help keep a really nice shape and structure. You just gotta be a little pushy. You gotta tell it what it needs to do first. And then let's close up this adorable little zipper. I wish I had some Haunted Mansion zipper pulls for number 3 zipper tape. Butterflies will do. How adorable is that? It's one of those you're gonna make 1,000 of them, and I mean it's gonna be great for everything. I hope you love making this. So if you're new to my channel, you might not know I love the Haunted Mansion. I love it. It's not like, you know, oh, what's your favorite ride? It's just like my favorite mood. It's my favorite experience. I try to work in the Haunted Mansion into everything. And I mean, if I could kind of go all out in my house and make everything Haunted Mansion themed, I probably would. But I rein it in quite a bit. But when I have the opportunity to pull out these colors, to pull out that spookiness, I take it. And this one is so stinking cute. It's my favorite one. So you can see, you can really get caught up in making these. Like I said, the first one might take you the longest. So the first one I made was this one right here, and it did take me the longest purely because I had to wrap my head around the method, right? It is totally different than how we normally make bags. However, once you get it, it makes complete sense, and then you can just smooth through the rest of them. And you could probably use that method on a lot of other bags. I mean, I'm already thinking of other patterns we've done where we've had this challenge, and it has been like, how do we get the zipper out of the binding? How do we make sure we don't put binding on that zipper? And I kind of want to revisit those now. So I hope you enjoy making these as much as I do. If you use this video to make them and you want to share them on social media, please make sure you tag me. I'd love to see your version. I'd love to see what you're using for this too. Vinyl, quill cotton, anything really. I would love to see it. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.